Hey, what's up guys, it's Aaron with 2 Minute Tech, where I bring you all the tips, tricks, news, reviews, and how-tos fast. And today, I'm going to show you how you can get some badass B-roll using macro tubes. As a YouTuber, you're constantly looking for ways to improve the overall quality of your content. Whether that's through better equipment, better technique, better presentation, you're always looking for different ways to approach your content to make it better. If you go back through some of my older videos on the channel, you see where I've tried to make these strides, be it through my A-roll, like this shot right here, or through my B-roll, which is what we're going to talk about today. There's a lot of different ways that you can improve your B-roll. It could be from better lighting, better lenses, or even just a better approach. As I've worked to improve my B-roll, one of the things that I've tried to do is vary the length that my camera is away from my product. To get those really nice tight close-up shots, you're going to want something called a macro shot. I know you've all seen macro shots before, either pictures of snowflakes or flowers, insects. There's a lot of different types of macro shots that you've seen. But if you want to add macro to your B-roll, it can really up that production value of the content that you're shooting. So if you have a camera that has removable lenses, like a mirrorless camera or a DSLR, one way that you can get macro shots is by replacing your lens with a macro lens. When I first tried to add macro shots to the channel, the first way I did it is through lenses. I actually bought two different 100mm lenses, one from Canon and one from Sigma. The Canon lens that I tried was a 100mm f2.8 fixed USM lens. This lens is really great for just standard still photography, but in terms of using it for video, I found it was really difficult to handle because it didn't have any image stabilization. So when I used the Canon lens, it was pretty shaky, and also that USM, that ultrasonic motor, is pretty loud and noisy. The Sigma lens that I tried was actually a 105mm f2.8 image stabilized lens. Now, even though this lens had image stabilization, it seemed like when I used it, it would drift. So if I had it locked off on a tripod, it would kind of drift up and down as it was trying to find the image stabilization. So aside from these minor issues on these lenses, the other issue is that they're super expensive. These macro lenses both start at about $500 and go up from there. So at that point in time, I wasn't really satisfied with the shots that I was getting with those lenses, and I wasn't about to keep $500 invested into something that I didn't really like. Fortunately for me, I stumbled upon something called macro tubes. Basically, a macro tube is an extension that you can add that's going to move your lens farther away from the image sensor on your camera. What this essentially does is allow you to get closer to your subject while also creating even more of a shallow depth of field. So if you have a lens that isn't a macro lens, you could add additional tubes to it to move it further away from the camera to get macro shots. The macro tubes that I got are from a company called Exit, or XIT, and they come in a pack of 3. There's a 13mm tube, a 21mm tube, and a 31mm tube. You can actually use these each individually, or you can stack all 3 of them together in any combination that you like. I do have to say that the build quality on these tubes does feel pretty cheap, but you are spending less than $30 to get macro lens shots. This particular kit from Exit does allow you to use autofocus. Not all macro tubes let you use that, so you'll want to check in the description when you're making your purchase. Speaking of making a purchase, down in the description I'll have links to all the products that I'm talking about as well. So aside from the cheaper build quality of the actual tube, I did feel also that the metal threading was kind of tight. I felt almost like I was going to break it when I was mounting it onto the lens, but once it was mounted in place, it was fine. Now you can use these tubes individually, or you can stack them together in pretty much any configuration that you want. So to show you some of the differences in shots that you can get, here's some standard footage that I took with my 50mm f1.8 lens from Canon. Now this shot with the 50mm is at the minimum focus distance. So this is as close as I can possibly get with this lens without it going out of focus. Here's what that same shot looks like with a 13mm macro tube attached to the 50mm lens. And the same shot with that 50mm now with the 21mm tube. The same shot again with the 50mm with the 31mm tube attached to it. And then just for fun, here's my 50mm lens with all 3 tubes attached. So if you're wanting to increase the overall production value of your B-roll by being able to get some nice, close, tight shots of your product, you should really check out these macro tubes from Exit. Thanks for watching.